Has AOC changed as a leader since she first entered office? Is former Vice President Kamala Harris running for president in 2028? And will voters finally elect a progressive in the Democratic primary for New York City mayor? More to discuss on this episode of Not Suitable for Democracy. Welcome to Not Suitable for Democracy. My name is Nick Hobby, and I'm your host. Today, we're going to discuss a range of topics between folks like AOC, Kamala Harris, former Governor Cuomo, and Zohran Mamdani. All of those four people in the same podcast? Pretty wild stuff, right? But there's always something going on in politics. But first, if you haven't already and you like what you hear and want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Okay, let's jump into it. On Friday, May 2nd, 2025, I had the opportunity to attend a town hall hosted by my member of Congress, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It was hosted at a local school in Jackson Heights, and it was the largest town hall that AOC has ever hosted. Not only was the entire auditorium filled with everyone, but also the overflow room was quite packed. So with that said, the fact that our member of Congress has been touring the country on the Fight the Oligarchy tour, right, sending a message of hope and fighting the oligarchy with wealth inequality, we then got to see her as our member of Congress right in the district on a Friday evening. So what makes the town hall different from a rally is while the rally is, really open to the entire public in an open space, the town hall was hosted at a school, but also open to constituents and non-constituents who registered in advance. And with that said, we really got to see our member of Congress in action. At the town hall, there's usually a presentation on updates, not only what our office is doing in relation to the current administration, but also just with the work on the ground here in the district. And then lastly, at the end of the town hall, the second half, there's always a Q&A portion. So constituents and non-constituents, again, have the opportunity to ask whatever is on their mind about the progress and advancements that AOC is doing for the district on behalf of the district in Congress. So one of the few things we learned was number one, AOC is on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which, believe it or not, has about 60% of all legislation that is rolled out in Congress goes through that committee. So the idea that AOC will be very much well-versed in policymaking, that she will have an eye on 60% of the legislation that goes through Congress, but also how can she be improving that legislation, not only from her progressive perspective, but also for those folks here in the district and our community. Interestingly enough, what we also found was that AOC is currently trying to stop the funding threats that we are getting from the Trump administration. So two quick examples. Number one, funding that's under threat is currently healthcare. We are currently poised to lose about $255 million to New York 14. And again, this goes to hospitals, community centers, healthcare providers, all in the district. And that is currently under threat based on the current cuts proposed by the Trump administration. Secondly, AOC was very fortunate enough to not only secure $63 million for the district, back when New York City had the superstorm where a lot of places were flooded, basement apartments were flooded, people lost everything, some even lost their lives. And, President Biden toured the district with AOC a few years ago and was able to secure $63 million for New York 14. However, since then, now with the current administration, that $63 million has been cut. That's right. So $63 million Trump has removed, eliminated, kaput, goodbye, has taken that away from our district. So should there be another natural disaster, we are going to be $63 million in the hole with a loss of adequate funding and resources that could really improve, if not save, people's lives. So again, elections have consequences, and no matter what you think about Harris or Trump, this is a clear-cut instance of how the people in the White House and the administration can have severe consequences from their decision making. So, with that said, AOC is doing everything she can to make sure our community is protected, and she is fighting back. Even at one point in the town hall where, she had shared with us that the leader of ICE, or at least Tom Homan, he has been calling for AOC, just denigrating her and just really calling her out in the media, especially since AOC is using her free speech to inform her constituents about their rights and about who can just bust into your home and kidnap you. So clearly she is doing the work, and Tom Homan is not happy about it. But in a triumphant moment in the town hall, she not only stood up to the crowd and said, if you're basically, trying to come for me, then come get me, because she is not afraid. She is willing to stand up, and she's putting herself out there in ways that many Democratic leaders, both elected in office and those sitting on the sidelines, have not done. So I give her a lot of credit for, strongly defending our community, but also doing everything she can to fight back. And then lastly, one other thing I really was inspired to see was how my member of Congress has changed or even grown since she first entered Congress. And we know that she came from an activist organizer background with a lot of her own experience, right? So because of that, we've seen her really, I've seen her really change in terms of how she commands herself as a leader, how she commanded the room in that town hall, but also it just came across as more of an executive. And I say that in a good way. Someone who is a true leader, both professionally, personally, morally, and someone who just totally wants to see her community stay strong, resilient, and fight back for us, right? She knows how to really communicate in a way that's reassuring, but also is boundary pushing. And I think that's what makes an incredible leader, someone who knows how to manage both really well and not just kind of play it safe, which we see so many leaders in the Democratic Party do quite too often, in my opinion. So with that said, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, phenomenal town hall, a lot of great questions asked. And I have to say, since she has changed, I want to say it's been for the better, where now that she is a more formidable member of Congress, she's no longer a freshman member, she has a lot of policymaking and experience under her belt, and this really does set her up for not only to be a stronger leader, but even a stronger candidate should she pursue, the New York senator election in 2028, or if she wants to run for president. That choice is up to her. But at the end of the day, she is a very, very much qualified young leader, and I am looking forward to what she does next. Speaking of who else I'd like to see what they're up to is VP Kamala Harris. I strongly believe that she is going to be running for president again in 2028. Now, I'm not saying we should all be supporting her right now. I'm actually very concerned with the way she's been framing her messaging since entering the public sphere after her stunning election loss in 2024. So, why do I think she's running again? Well, as a person, right, I think it's safe to say that VP Harris, she brings, good humor and joy to the table while navigating, the typical stuffy, entrenched establishment politics that are typically very stale. So she brings a breath of fresh air that is not normally seen by many politicians, let alone a woman. So on top of that, she's also very tough and brings a level of tenacity that and grit that isn't always seen by people in politics. So for instance, right, the fact that she has taken a lot of criticism and a lot of heat for a lot of her past record, but also her job as VP, right? She's had to rise up and be stronger because of that. So she definitely has, I think, the ability to navigate the waters and become a leader running for president. But also, let's just think about her as an ambitious and competitive person. We see that in her quick ascendancy to the vice presidency, where being as ambitious as she is, she ran for office and winning every election except for the last one, but she ascended very quickly as the district attorney of San Francisco, as the attorney general of California, as the senator from California, and as vice president of the United States. So I don't think many people have ascended to that level of power so quickly. but also she definitely has the network and the people around her that create that level of ascendancy for her, right? She's very much aligned with former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. She's very much in good standing with a lot of the donors, right? The fact that she raised, over $1 billion in the presidential election under a very short time frame, right? And as vice president, she obviously has made her relationships and built them during those 4 years. So all of that to say is that being so close to the top job and someone like her who's clearly shown a level of competitiveness, which is good, which is healthy, I think that to me says that she is very much interested in running for president again in 2028. Now, as much as she has the background for it, I'm actually very much concerned of her messaging and her framing. So what I mean by that is now, even though she's not currently she's a private citizen, so she doesn't need to necessarily talk policy, but I think that's where my biggest concern is because of the moves she's made and things she said since her 2024 election loss. So one of the first moves she made was actually sign with a Hollywood entertainment firm. Her and President Biden both did that, basically in a major effort to overhaul their public image. We know that after losing the election to President Trump is very much going to put a breach of trust and a sour taste in people's mouths after, losing to that guy, right? Just the way he carried himself versus the way they carried themselves on the policy and the platform they ran on, it's not good. So in order to regain trust and really reshape how people see you, it makes sense that they're going to make moves with Hollywood, which has expansive reach, not only here in the country, but across the globe, to access to, creators and entertainment juggernauts that could really help bolster their image through association and the resources that Hollywood can provide. So, for instance, one of VP Harris's first public appearances since her election loss was at the NAACP Image Awards. She had a great speech. She was dressed really sharp in a nice black suit. And with that, it really did put the perception of her back in the public eye in a positive way, speaking, not only to her core base, which was the black community, but it also just showed that she is willing to take the necessary steps to change how people see her so she can run a more successful campaign in 2028. Now, after that, most recently, she gave her first public speech at the Emerge Awards. And during that speech, that was her first big public criticism of the Trump administration, calling out, the tactics that he's doing is not really what our democracy is about. The idea that, he is instilling fear in people. However, her message to combat that was around courage is contagious, saying that, well, fear is contagious, but so is courage. Courage is contagious, and we can all learn from that. Now, while it's an admirable message and it does mean something really noble, I would just caution clearly how this phrase or slogan is something that was probably poll tested, right? The average everyday American doesn't really use the word contagious, let alone in relation to courage or say courage is contagious. When most people think of the word contagious, it's usually about like a disease or someone sickly or like in a pretty much negative framing. So really curious to see how she thought, courage is contagious would maybe resonate well. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it reminds me of when President Biden in 2020 used the phrase or slogan, battling for the soul of the nation, right? That line was very much framing his fight against Trump, all the negative actions that were happening in the Trump administration the first time, contrasting with, who we are as Americans. That's a message that resonated with everyone across party lines. Clearly it worked, right? So now I'm curious as to like which one of her advisors wanted her to speak in this type of way, because it does make a difference between her as a former vice president versus her as a private citizen. So during the Emerge Awards, she did, call out some Democratic leaders such as Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Bernie Sanders, even some of the moderates doing great work. I believe that the way it came across, right? She was saying that they provide moral clarity. That's something that Harris hasn't done adequately, especially on the economy or even what's going on in Gaza. So to hear her say that, knowing that AOC and Bernie's moral clarity came from an economic populist message, again, something Harris did not run on, but also fighting the oligarchy, something that Harris is almost arguably a part of. Now, I'm not saying that she is a tech billionaire herself, but for raising billions of dollars from a lot of the liberal elites and let alone wealthier echelon of America, it's safe to say that she does have good relationships with the oligarchy. Maybe not the tech bro oligarchy, right? Such as Musk or Zuckerberg or Bezos. But that is to say, she's very much a part of the liberal elite. So I would caution everyone before we start throwing our hat in the ring for saying, let's support VP Harris, because right now we know that Bernie and AOC are challenging the wealth inequality in this country, where Harris is benefiting from that wealth inequality. And I haven't heard her say anything about the tech oligarchs that are exacerbating wealth inequality, that are taking advantage of the tax breaks and not paying anything in federal taxes, or how we should be improving our quality of life. For instance, one of Harris's public statements in the past was, she believes healthcare is a human right, and that's why it should be affordable. Now, I just want to say that is absolutely not the right response. Any Democratic politician or any politician who says healthcare is a right, it should be affordable, is clearly not fighting for you. And I strongly believe that, because if they were to fight for you, our rights don't have a price tag on it. Free speech doesn't have a price tag. It shouldn't. It's enshrined in our Constitution as the First Amendment, so we should not be putting, a price point or saying that, only if you can afford it can you have the right. Healthcare as a human right, as Bernie Sanders and AOC and many other leaders who are, bold enough to say the right thing will say to you, healthcare is a human right. It should be guaranteed to all people. And Harris saying it needs to be affordable just enables the current system where more people go into medical debt, where more people have to make that choice between can they afford their prescription or food on the table, right? So again, if they're telling you healthcare is a right and it's affordable, that's not the way to go. You need to be saying healthcare is a right for everyone. And then lastly, we even saw VP Harris at the Met Gala. Now, I do have to give her props for leaning into the theme, which was Black dandyism, super fine tailoring for you. Because of that, it is great to see that she could attend the Met Gala in the sense that it was a way to show off her, her public image. She's a part of the culture, right? Especially Black culture. So smart move for her to attend. Now, of course, she wasn't there to make a political statement per se, but her presence as a former VP during the time when the Trump administration is attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, does speak volumes. So I do give her credit for attending the event in the sense that it's a cultural moment, sending a message, pushing it back against the Trump administration. But again, if we're going to have her as a Democratic contender to eventually lead the party in 2028, we must be challenging how she is communicating, especially about wealth inequality, about progressive priorities, and how she plans on doing better should she run again in 2028. One last note about VP Harris before switching from national politics to local politics is about her daughter, Ella Emhoff. Ella is the daughter of Doug Emhoff, formerly the second gentleman, and Ella had just endorsed Zohran Mamdani for mayor of New York City. Now, granted, we know VP Harris had a very pro-Israel stance during the presidential election, and Ella feels very differently. I'm sure those make for some very interesting dinner table conversations, but long story short, Ella has a large following on social media. She is very progressive, Gen Z, but then also throwing her hat into the mayoral election. I'd be very curious to see how that translates into support for Zohran. Now, the New York City mayor election is the Democratic primary happening right now, with the election less than 50 days away. There's about 9 formidable challengers who are all running for the mayor's seat. Now, because New York City is a strong Democratic stronghold, we know that basically whoever wins the Democratic primary generally will win the general election. But this election is going to be interesting for the Democratic primary for a few reasons. Number one, out of the 9 contenders, there's a range of state senators, city council members, state assembly member, but then also the former governor of New York. Number 2, it's ranked choice voting. We know that there are 5 options to rank candidates from most preferred number 1 to least preferred number 5. I strongly recommend that you vote for 5 candidates to fill up your ballot. The goal here is to make sure that whoever wins the Democratic primary through ranked choice voting basically wins the consensus of the voters. Now imagine if 3 candidates were running and they all received 33% of the vote. The person who wins gets 34%. That would mean that 2/3 of the electorate, 66%, did not have a say in voting for the winner who only got 34%. So to build that consensus, the candidates this time around will need to really build a broad coalition with broad messaging to garner support. And ideally, the winner of ranked choice voting would be a true majority of the people. So what also makes this election interesting, again, not just between the slate of candidates and ranked choice voting, but also under the backdrop of what crises this city is facing. We are in an affordability crisis, and we are trying to survive cuts or threats from the Trump administration. So should the leader of of America's largest city win this election, they will have to take on many challenges, including the Trump administration. So whoever you choose to vote for, make sure you fill out the 5 ballot options for your ranked choice ballot. That is going to be very important in making sure we elect a qualified leader who represents everyone in the city, but also has the skill and political will to be courageous and brave against Trump 2.0. So now we have a lot of great candidates in the race. We have 5 great progressive or progressive-leaning candidates. We have State Senator Zelnor Miri, State Senator Jessica Ramos, City Comptroller Brad Lander, City Council Speaker Adrian Adams, and State Assembly Member Zohran Mamdani. Those are the 5 progressive-leaning candidates who I will be ranking. I'm definitely ranking Zohran number 1. The other 4 I have yet to decide. But with that said, these 5 are really going to be tasked with, what policies are they putting forward that can truly transform our city. 2, we know that from the presidential election, the New York Times had shared that the city had skewed more moderate or more conservative in the sense that VP Harris earned less of a vote share than President Biden when he ran in 2020. So granted, again, Harris didn't necessarily campaign in New York City during the presidential election, but nonetheless, that sway of voter trend is kind of leaning into how the electorate is feeling here in the city compared to all the candidates. With that said, we have disgraced former Governor Andrew Cuomo. I will not be supporting him. I strongly encourage you not to rank him on your ballot. Really quickly, too many credible sexual assault allegations. We should not be supporting that behavior. Number 2, the fact that the nursing home scandal, he not only put a lot of sick people in the nursing homes with COVID, but then, fudged the numbers to make him look better while people died under his watch as governor. So definitely not okay. Lastly, for me, was his wrangling in the IDC, the Independent Democratic Conference. Cuomo campaigned on saying, I'll support progressive legislation, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, he knew that the state assembly could not pass progressive legislation because he handpicked 8 Democrats in the state Senate to caucus with the Republicans. And what that did was block any progressive legislation from getting from the state assembly to his desk to sign because those 8 plus the Republicans would block it. So, that way he can pretend like he was being a progressive leader with progressive voters while getting the money and the backing from the moderate, big special interest group donors, right? And saying, hey, don't worry, none of this stuff's actually going to pass. And he governed like that for quite some time until in 2018, progressives, organized. We had Cynthia Nixon challenge him, and she ran on an anti-IDC message, and that really did break the corruption in Albany. So, with that said, the way Cuomo governed between his corruption scandals and between his behavior and just his lack of leadership, I really wouldn't support him in any good faith argument, especially if the same type of behavior, we've seen Donald Trump do, just because Cuomo's a Democrat doesn't mean we should give him a pass. So I highly encourage everyone to not rank Andrew Cuomo. We deserve better leaders, and Andrew Cuomo is not it. So with that said, I'll be personally supporting Zohran Mamdani. He is tackling the affordability crisis head on with his platform. On top of that, right, how is he going to pay for it all? For those who haven't heard yet, number one, Zohran plans on working with the state legislature to, make sure there's adequate funding in the state budget to address a lot of the needs for New York City. Number two, he plans on raising the corporate tax rate for corporations from 7% to 11%, roughly. That's already closely on par with what's happening in New Jersey. So if we can meet, where New Jersey is, at least we can generate a little more funding from businesses, big business doing business here in the city. Then even in terms of the millionaires and billionaires, right? We know that wealth inequality is a huge issue in New York City, probably the worst or most exacerbated issue in the country. With that said, he plans on raising the tax for millionaires and billionaires. So if they pay a little more in taxes, all of that combined can generate an additional $10 billion in revenue. Why we haven't done it in the past is because we know that our leaders take too much money from those millionaires and billionaires. So if Zohran can actually, make sure that our state legislature supports his initiative to raise the taxes on millionaires and billionaires, we can generate some serious revenue that can seriously fund some really well-deserved and well-needed programs that are just going to improve the quality of life for every New Yorker. So truly support what he has to say and what he's doing. Lastly, I'll touch on the endorsements that are happening in the race. So number one, we know that DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, they support Zohran. They endorsed him in the election. That not only gave him a strong foundation in terms of donors and volunteers, but also just exposure, right? The citywide chapter is made of like thousands of members. So it's great to see that they are using their working class pro-leftist agenda to really boost a candidate as deserving as Zohran. Number two, we see the Working Families Party. They had endorsed 4 candidates: Zelma Ramiri, Adrian Adams, Brad Lander, and Zohran. They have yet to share their ranked endorsement, so I'm very curious to see how they rank them when it gets closer to the election. On top of that, we also see the Stonewall Democrats, the LGBTQ plus Democratic Club of the city. I personally keep an eye on them because I know that LGBTQ voters are very important in the Democratic primary. And we also want to make sure that we're advancing and advocating for policies and programs that support the needs of our community. So it's really great to see that they had endorsed Adrian Adams number 1, Brad Lander number 2, and Zohran Mamdani as number 3. Now, typically in the past, Stonewall Democrats have not necessarily advocated for or endorsed progressive challengers who are Democratic Socialists. In 2018, they did not endorse Cynthia Nixon. In 2019, they did not endorse Tiffany Caban. And now they did endorse Zohran in 2025. So I will say maybe they have learned from some of their past mistakes, and it's nice to see that he did get number 3. I wish he was number 1, but at the end of the day, I'll take it. So good to see how LGBTQ plus voters are thinking about their candidates. On top of that, we have, in my opinion, the most important one, which is the Sunrise Movement. Sunrise Movement national chapter, national organization, endorsed Zohran for mayor. It is their first national endorsement for a mayoral candidate. And we know Sunrise Movement means business. They are very much committed to combating the climate crisis and putting their heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears, everything into electing their candidates. They played a pivotal role in President Biden's election. And how did he get 81 million votes? A lot of that was through progressive organizing through the Sunrise Movement. So shout out to Sunrise Movement doing incredible work at the national level. And I'm very excited to see what they have in store for Zohran between all of the volunteer power with phone banking, door knocking, canvassing. This is definitely a coveted endorsement just between the stature that it has, the status, but more so just the people who are in it to win it. So really excited to see how that plays out for Zohran. And then lastly, I want to call out the New York Times because this is the first time since 1897 that they will not endorse in a mayoral primary. This decision was made in August of 2024, and I believe after, a lot of back and forth in terms of, public sentiment, how much do endorsements play a role in campaigning? Number two, we know that President Trump was retaliating against potential people who didn't endorse him, right? We saw Jeff Bezos get on Trump's good side in 2024 by choosing not to endorse, using the Washington Post to not endorse in the presidential election. They would have endorsed VP Harris, but Bezos told the editorial board not to. So with that said, we know that moves like that have been made in order to protect not only these institutions, but also, sometimes it doesn't always go as planned. For example, in the 2021 mayoral primary, New York Times endorsed Catherine Garcia. She didn't win the primary, but she came in a close second. She only lost by 7,000 votes. So if 7,000 votes could make or break an election and the New York Times really boosted her candidacy, who's to say what role they could play in this year's election? But we know that they are not endorsing in this Democratic primary. So with that type of power now dissipated across the candidates, it'd be very curious to see what future endorsement or what move will be made to really boost the momentum of potentially the winning candidate from here through Election Day. That said, there's a lot of speculation around Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and who she will endorse in the mayoral primary. Now, personally, I think she's going to maybe endorse a slate, right? Maybe like Adrienne Adams, Zohran Mamdani, Brad Lander. She may throw her hat into the ring, just kind of reaffirming her messaging on who progressives should be looking for. But again, she may not. We've already seen moves by Andrew Cuomo and his brother Chris Cuomo by criticizing her role in the Fight the Oligarchy tour, right? Trying to criticize her and trying to goad her into making a statement or comment in the media. I think what Cuomo wants to do is really get her into the mayoral primary, endorse, and then should Cuomo win, he can then say, aha, I'm more powerful than you. AOC's endorsement means nothing. Don't listen to her. So I would even be okay if AOC didn't endorse at all, right? Let it be up to the voters. Don't give Cuomo that win. He's going to try to frame it negatively, whether she endorses it or not. But at the end of the day, I'll strongly be supporting Zohran Mamdani, true progressive vision for the city. With that said, the Democratic primary is on June 24th. Early voting starts June 14th, and I strongly encourage you to rank 5 candidates on your ballot. And don't forget, the Democratic primary also includes municipal positions such as city council, district attorney, and other local positions that may be open in your election district. So again, make sure you stay informed, do your homework, and make sure that you're ranking 5 candidates on your ballot because that is suitable for democracy. And that's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate the support. If you like what you heard and want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you'd like to learn more on a deeper dive, then make sure to subscribe to my Substack at nsfdpod.substack.com. If you have any questions or comments or want to chat, then make sure to follow on Instagram. You can follow at nsfd_pod. And remember, we've got the New York City Democratic primary coming up in less than 50 days. The election is on June 24th, with early voting starting June 14th. Make sure to rank 5 candidates on your ballot for the municipal elections. And remember, democracy is not suitable without you.